Clarence Worley is an average guy with a passion for Elvis and kung fu flicks. He is in a pub sharing his Elvis enthusiasm with a girl who clearly couldn't care less. He still extends an invitation for an epic kung fu movie night starring none other than the legendary Sonny Chiba. She politely declines, and Clarence decides to head to the theater solo. In the dimly lit theater, an attractive blonde named Alabama Whitman stumbles into the row behind Clarence, causing a popcorn avalanche right onto his lap. Without missing a beat, Clarence brushes off the popcorn, flashing a charming grin. Alabama apologizes and lights up a cigarette, but when she asks if it bothers him, Clarence simply shakes his head. Alabama leaves her row and confidently slides into the seat next to Clarence. Eager to connect, she leans in and asks what she's missed in the movie. Clarence, being a kung fu flick nerd, is more than happy to explain the thrilling on-screen action with a twinkle in his eye. The sparks of a new connection flicker in the dimly lit theater as they watch 3 movies back to back. After the movies, Clarence and Alabama go to a pie restaurant where their conversation bubbles with shared interests and laughter. Clarence is clearly smitten, intrigued by Alabama's personality and beauty. Surprisingly, they discover they have much in common, and Clarence is happy that he found someone who likes Elvis and kung fu flicks as much as him. Their next stop is Clarence's workplace, a comic book store. Alabama finds herself drawn to Clarence's simple yet endearing personality, and in between the colorful comic book shelves, their lips meet for a passionate kiss. Returning to Clarence's apartment, the atmosphere is charged with electric anticipation. They share a passionate, happy moment together. Alabama then reveals that she's a call girl. She is there as a birthday gift from Clarence's considerate employer. But, shockingly, Alabama confesses that in just a few hours, she's fallen head over heels in love with Clarence. Clarence's reaction is far from what you'd expect. He's entirely unfazed by her profession. He too admits to being captivated by her charm and has fallen deeply for her. The very next day, they tie the knot and ink each other's names at a tattoo parlor. But during the process, Clarence's mood sours as he learns the name Drexel, her pimp. Later that evening, Clarence asks for Alabama's previous address, determined to retrieve her belongings. She protests, knowing Drexel's dangerous reputation. Nevertheless, Clarence leaves with a gun under his socks. At Drexel's place, Clarence is being threatened by Drexel. He calls him a coward and a fool for walking into his house on his own. Clarence is also not letting Drexel win the verbal battle. He too tries to thrash talk him, which only angers Drexel further. His partner holds Clarence from behind as he lands a hard blow on his face. After a few more blows, Clarence fights back the duo. Drexel is initially impressed, but Clarence is outnumbered and clearly the weaker one. Drexel beats Clarence further, turning his face into a bloody mess. In a moment of distraction, Clarence seizes his chance, shooting Drexel right at the nuts. Shock ripples through the room as Clarence takes down Drexel's partner too, and flees with a bag, believing it to be Alabama's. He delivers a final bullet to Drexel's head before leaving. Alabama is in tears, but finds the situation oddly romantic. Surprise strikes again when the bag contains a large amount of drugs and not Alabama's belongings. The next morning, the couple visits Clarence's father, Mr. Worley, who is a former cop. His dad is stunned to see him with his wife after 3 years of having no contact. When they're alone, Clarence gets to the point, sharing the Drexel incident and asking Mr. Worley to check with his police connections if they're looking for him. Initially resistant, Mr. Worley's parental love prevails, and he agrees to check Clarence's situation. After a thorough inquiry, he reassures Clarence that he's in the clear, as the incident is linked to drug gang violence. There's just one hiccup, a bag of missing drugs that belongs to the fearsome drug lord, Mr. Blue Lou. As long as Clarence isn't connected to the missing coke, there's nothing to fret about. Relieved, the couple expresses gratitude and prepares to head to Dick's apartment in LA, Hollywood. Before leaving, Clarence hands over his best friend, Dick's apartment address to Mr. Worley. However, a sinister turn awaits Mr. Worley. A group of Sicilian men working for the notorious Mr. Blue Lou pays him a chilling visit. They surround him and demand information about his son. Mr. Worley initially lies, earning a punch to the face. As Vincenzo continues to press for details, Mr. Worley decides to change his story, but is met with a painful cut on his palm. Eventually, he confesses and asks for a cigarette. With a cigarette in hand, he deviates by sharing a story about Sicilians having African ancestry. This infuriates Vincenzo, who promptly ends Mr. Worley's life with a gunshot to the head. To make matters worse, they discover the Hollywood address that Clarence had given his father. The couple arrives at Dick's apartment, where they find him in the company of his ever-chill roommate Floyd. He's sitting on the sofa and smoking his recreational drugs. They convince Dick to join them and head to an inn. Dick is overjoyed to reunite with his best friend, but is taken aback when Clarence reveals the real reason for their Hollywood visit. He shows him the stash of drugs he took by mistake and shares his plan to sell it for $200,000, even though it's worth $500,000. Clarence asks Dick for assistance in finding a buyer, given Hollywood's lucrative connections. Initially hesitant, Dick hatches a plan. He decides to set up a meeting with his friend Elliot, who works for the renowned Hollywood director Lee Donowitz. Dick believes that only someone of Lee's stature could afford such a substantial purchase. Clarence, Alabama, and Dick meet Elliot at an amusement park to discuss the deal, all while riding a roller coaster. Clarence crafts a story about obtaining the drugs with the help of a friend in law enforcement, claiming that his police buddy took it from the department's inventory and wants to share the profits by selling it. Elliot isn't entirely convinced, but Clarence persists, urging him to arrange a conversation with Lee. Clarence calls Lee and employs his persuasive charm to win him over. They set a meeting for later, moving one step closer to finalizing the risky deal that could change their lives forever. As Clarence leaves to grab some food, he drops Alabama off at the inn. To her surprise, she finds Virgil, one of Vincenzo's henchmen, waiting in her room. At first, she pretends to be clueless, but Virgil sees through the act and attacks her. He relentlessly demands information about Clarence and the bag of drugs. He keeps torturing her, but Alabama proves to be far tougher than she appears. She drives a screw pin into Virgil's feet and bashes his head with a nearby statue. Enraged, Virgil retaliates by throwing her through glass, but Alabama's wit matches her bravery. She uses a lighter and deodorant to burn his face, then strikes him with a toilet slab. In the end, she takes his life with the shotgun he brought. When Clarence returns to the room, he's devastated to find Alabama covered in blood. The couple hastily escapes the inn with the bag of drugs, seeking a safer refuge. Meanwhile, Elliot finds himself pulled over by the police for speeding, and to his horror, the officers discover the packet of drugs he'd taken from Clarence as a sample. Under threat, Elliot spills the beans about Lee and Clarence's upcoming meeting. He reluctantly agrees to assist the police by wearing wires and spying on Lee. Clarence, Alabama, and Dick arrive at the hotel where the meeting was scheduled. They encounter Elliot in the lobby and enter an elevator with him. Clarence becomes suspicious, prompting him to draw his gun and threaten Elliot. The police, listening in through the wire on Elliot, enjoy the tense moment, fearing that Clarence might actually harm him. As Elliot pleads for his life and insists he knows nothing, Clarence ultimately lowers his gun and embraces him to ease the pressure. Inside a hidden room, Lee and his bodyguards are waiting for Clarence. They chat, and Lee's admiration for Clarence grows, especially after Clarence mentions that the Vietnam War movie he made is one of his all-time favorites. On the other side of the line, tension mounts as the cops wait for the deal to finalize. Lee and Clarence step outside to discuss the deal, and Clarence effortlessly wins him over. As the deal is sealed, the cops prepare to make their move. Lee hands Alabama the bag of money to count while Clarence excuses himself to the bathroom. Suddenly, the police burst in, ordering everyone to surrender. Lee's bodyguards resist, escalating the tension. Just as things couldn't get tenser, Vincenzo's men enter, creating a three-way standoff. In the midst of this chaos, Elliot tries to talk to an officer, leading Lee to realize he's the traitor. Enraged, he jumps at Elliot, but a shot rings out, setting off a hail of bullets. Everyone opens fire, leading to a deadly shootout. When Clarence emerges from the bathroom and hears the chaos, a bullet grazes his left eye and he collapses. Alabama rushes to his side, believing she's lost him. But miraculously, Clarence is alive. Alabama is overjoyed as he awakens, and they leave the blood-soaked scene with the bag of money. They drive off without anyone noticing. Years later, we see Alabama by a beach, watching Clarence and their son playing near the waves. The couple has finally found a calm place to spend the rest of their lives together. Thanks for watching.